There we go. I don't know how that started. I don't know how to make it stop. So, hello everyone. Sarah, I'm going to try to make you the co-host as well. And you can help Stephanie. Sarah, will you raise your hand so you go to the top? Hey, Becky. Oh, I have a lot of friends here. This is great. Okay, so we have a really great class tonight. I am going to tell you that it is a lot of information. I have my notes. I'm going to be teaching with my notes, which I normally do not need notes, but this is such a research heavy topic that I want to make sure that I'm not leaving anything out. So I would suggest, if you don't already have like a piece of paper to take some notes on, do so. This is being recorded and it will get sent to you tomorrow. So you will be able to listen to it again. But tonight we're going to be talking about hormones, phytoestrogen, cancer prevention, and a whole bunch of other things, because the topic of hormones is a really, really big topic. So the reason I started out with this picture, you guys, this is not my family. If you're wondering, this is a stock photo off of Google. But the reason I picked this picture is because, number one, in Michigan in the summer, we love the beach. But primarily because this picture shows all ages. And that's really what we're going to be talking about tonight, is how this topic applies to both genders and all ages. Because this is not just a middle-aged woman situation that we talk about here. So, okay. So as I mentioned, this is a big topic. So what I would really encourage you to do is, as we talk tonight, just consider, what are the things that I want to continue doing, because I learned that they're really good. What's maybe one or two things that I want to start doing, and what's one or two things that I want to stop doing. This information might be overwhelming, and there might be a lot of it filling your brain tonight. And if you can just take one or two things to start doing, then that will be a good place to start. Okay, so we're going to start out our topic of hormones actually talking about adrenals. So you can see here that I've listed certain parts of the body in this domino track, if you will. And I will often say that the adrenals are the first domino, meaning by the time we get to either thyroid or reproductive issues, it's because our adrenals really have had a hard time and have taken a hit. And so we'll get to the reproductive part, the estrogen part and the testosterone part and things like that. But we need to start with the beginning, and that is the adrenals. And let me show you why that's the beginning. So in our bodies, someone's logged into my Zoom account. In our bodies, we have lots and lots of hormones coming from lots of different places. Now, you might be able to actually see my notes here, which is probably a good thing for you as well. But a hormone is a chemical messenger. And its job is to take information from one part of the body and give that information to one or several other parts of the body. So you can see here, this is a list of the different places where hormones not only are produced, but work. And we're going to start here with the adrenals. You can see that our adrenal organs help to produce androgens, glucocorticoids, which have to do with sugar. Anytime you see the word gluco, that's sugar, adrenaline, and noradrenaline. So the adrenals are the first domino because it's their job to keep us alive. Anytime we're working with the hormone adrenaline, it's a fight or flight situation. And that reaction, that fight or flight reaction, is meant to save our lives in a dangerous situation. So our body will always prioritize our processes that will help preserve our life first over ones that are considered secondary processes in the body. Okay. So the adrenals produce over 50 hormones that act as balancers in our body. So the adrenals are a very important organ in our body. Now, when we look at adrenaline and cortisol, many of you have heard about cortisol because it is something I think that we've been taught to associate with belly fat. And here's why. So we know that adrenaline is that fight or flight that we talked about. And you can see here the purple wave or the purple line is our adrenaline surges throughout our body. And think about the times that adrenaline is released in your body. Sometimes it is an actual fight or flight situation. Like if we're driving down the road and somebody pulls out in front of us, right? We go, and our adrenaline releases instantly, and our body uses that adrenaline, uses those messages to help us react and help us protect ourselves and anyone else that's with us, right? But here's what we also need to know. Adrenaline is released when our brain perceives that there is a life or death situation, but it's actually not. So for example, what if you realize that you're late for an appointment? Being late for an appointment doesn't mean that anyone's going to die, but our body releases adrenaline like we're in that situation. And we are living in a environment that releases a lot of adrenaline. So you can see here that cortisol is the reactionary hormone that helps to balance out adrenaline. So cortisol is released shortly after any time adrenaline is released. And cortisol is meant to be that balancer to help bring our adrenaline levels down. However, one of the things that high cortisol levels do is it promotes the storage of fat in our bodies because it helps to tell our body, hey, I don't know what the situation is here, but we might not be able to stop and get food. So let's just store fat and calories until we can calm this situation down. So cortisol is a recovery from stress. It helps to manage our immune response. Now, the adrenals contribute up to half of all female hormones. And anytime our adrenals are overworked, anytime we're overstressed and overworking our adrenals, we are going to have an impact on all of the hormone levels in our body. Now, this bottom statement says progesterone is the primary raw material for cortisol. So what that means, we'll get to progesterone a little bit later, but here's what I want you to know. If you're overstressed, if your adrenals are working overtime, and we already said our body is going to prioritize the work of the adrenals, we are going to have low amounts of progesterone. Okay, so file that away. We're going to talk about progesterone when it comes to thyroid and estrogen a little bit later. I will tell you that I have yet to meet a woman in her probably 30s and older that is not overworked in the adrenal department, meaning does not have adrenal fatigue. And the reason is because we women have the ability to take care of everything and everyone. And we do that in large part by the use of adrenaline in our body. Okay. So we'll talk about what this looks like on the next slide, but I want you to just kind of adopt a belief right now that this is probably you. Okay. All right. So adrenal fatigue, so overworking of the adrenals, is caused by chronic stress and other choices such as toxins, negative emotions, lack of sleep, poor diet, lack of exercise. This can mimic autoimmune disorders and it can be misdiagnosed. So you'll see the list of major symptoms of adrenal fatigue here. It's a long list. You don't have to have all of these to have this be on your plate. And I will also say that last year and a half, a lot of these symptoms increased for a lot of people. And so I want you to just maybe consider the increased stress that we've all been under and if this is at work in your life. So what does it look like to support healthy adrenal function? Well, supporting a healthy body always, always, always starts with nutrition. And I think helping to understand that food goes into a category of either foods that hurt or foods that heal is really important. Try to eat more fruits and vegetables, avoid sugar, and caffeine intake can really make the problem of your adrenal fatigue worse because it just kind of keeps that motor running, that adrenaline going. So supplementing is going to be important. B vitamins, vitamins C and D, zinc and magnesium, and we'll talk more about those specifically in a minute, but lifelong vitality is just a really, really, really great place to start, okay? And then use your oils for stress reduction and for better sleep and better exercise. The aroma touch technique, which we're gonna learn more about here next month, and we learned about last week also, is a really great way to bring back in balance the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. So your fight or flight versus your rest and digest. And if you're familiar with Symphony of the Cells, the solar protocol is specific to adrenal function, but emobic, purpose, and sensory are really great for emotions in general, and you can use any of those throughout the week. Also use your oils to get exercise. And by exercise, I don't mean like the guilt driven, I need to run so many miles today, right? That kind of exercise, the obligatory. What I mean here is exercise that you feel calmer and more peaceful afterwards. So whether that's a walk, whether that is yoga, whatever that is for you. And for some of you, it might be running and that's okay. And then oils to help you get a good night's sleep. Okay. Here's some products that are really, really great for adrenal support. So one of the things that I'll say also is I have some friends who are nurses in the ICU, and they do like a swing schedule. So some weeks they'll work days, some weeks they'll work nights, and their major problem is just feeling exhausted. I would say a really great way to describe adrenal fatigue is it feels like my motor is always running, but I'm exhausted. And no matter how much sleep I get, I'm still exhausted. I never just feel refreshed, okay? And Mito 2 Max, for them, they just see this huge difference in how much nice, calm energy they have and not that feeling of exhaustion all the time. So Mito 2 Max, the recommended dose is 2 capsules per day. However, if you're looking to really support and rest your adrenals, you can go up to 4 capsules a day. So I would recommend 2 in the morning, 2 in the kind of lunchtime area. Basil, you know how like essential oils work almost immediately when you smell them for emotions? Basil is that way for your adrenals when you do 2 drops under the tongue. It's amazing how that motor running feeling, which sometimes it can actually feel like or be mistaken for like a baseline anxiety. Sometimes that can be your adrenals and the adrenaline that you're feeling. So 2 drops under the tongue, and or you can do it topically over your adrenals. So your adrenals sit right over your kidneys, so low back on either side of the spine. Put in the chat if you use either Mito 2 Max or Basil on a routine basis for your adrenals and you find it really, really helpful. Okay, now there's been some really great research studies done with adrenaline levels in the bloodstream and certain oils. So patchouli, rose, and whisper, the research has found that just inhaling any of these oils will reduce adrenaline levels. And clary sage, you can inhale clary sage to reduce cortisol levels, which we know follows adrenaline levels. and improve thyroid hormone levels. Anytime you're supporting the adrenals, you're also going to be supporting the thyroid, and we'll talk about that next. So share in the chat if you use any of these oils on a regular basis and if that's helpful for you. I will tell you personally, when I first started using oils 5, 6, 7 years ago, clary sage was something that I wanted nothing to do with. I hated the smell. And in the last probably year and a half, clary sage has been the most amazing oil, and I crave it and I carry it with me wherever I go. It's just something that my body has decided it needs more of. So okay, so we are going to move on to the thyroid. That was our next domino after the adrenals. So thyroid hormones help control how the body uses food for energy. Thyroid hormones need progesterone for optimal function. And remember, we said that if the adrenals need progesterone to make cortisol. The thyroid is a kind organ. It's kind of the peacekeeper of the body. And so the thyroid will down regulate its activity or turn down its function if we are in adrenal overdrive. So there's this connection between the thyroid and the adrenals in the sense that the thyroid will divert resources to the adrenals for adrenaline and cortisol. So a lot of times when women are in adrenal fatigue, they don't get a diagnosis and help until the thyroid has become dysfunctional, and then they get a thyroid diagnosis and they get treatment for the thyroid. But the adrenal problem still exists, and that typically hadn't been addressed when the thyroid is with this new diagnosis. So if you are a woman who has a dysfunctional thyroid, go back to those slides about the adrenals and look at, do I have these symptoms? Am I living in an overstressed environment and life? And I need to address that. The thyroid and estrogen also have a connection, and that is that the thyroid hormones have similarities to estrogen, and the receptor sites to the thyroid can be blocked in an estrogen dominance situation. We'll talk about estrogen dominance in a minute, but I want you to know that the thyroid is kind of this middle ground, if you will, and it can really be affected by other things that are going on in the body. So again, if you have a thyroid diagnosis, look at other things that are happening in your body. This typically does not happen in a silo. So what can we do to support the thyroid? So the Zendocrine products, both the Zendocrine blend, which can come in a soft gel, as you see here, and the detoxification complex, which is an herbal complex, those two products can be very, very helpful to support the thyroid. We have talked in the past about how maybe if you're on a thyroid medication that has side effects that you want to be away from, that taking these two products can be a great alternative to some thyroid medications. And if that is you, please reach out to the person who invited you to this. We'll get you more resources on that. DDR Prime can also be a really great support to the thyroid. This blend has a lot of oils that you'll find in our reference books that will help the thyroid. And so if you're more of an internal person than a topical person, you can use DDR Prime to support the thyroid as well. Okay, we're moving on. I know we're covering a lot, but we're moving on. All right, so this is a picture of what our hormones do in a 28-day female hormone cycle. And you're going to see here estrogen and progesterone and testosterone. Women have all of these hormones and they all come into play in these 28 days, okay? So a few things that I want to share with you that might be helpful. So number one, let's look at day 14, which is ovulation. Okay. Day 14 is when our estrogen level is at our highest. Estrogen does some amazing things. It helps to reduce pain. It also helps with verbal and cognitive processing. And this amount of estrogen on day 14 helps us to feel like we are on the top of the world. Okay. We have the most verbal at this time of the month. We have the most energy and activity at this time of the month. We think the clearest and the fastest at this time of the month. So if you don't already pay attention to how your body wants to function every month, please do so. Okay. So what this means is if you're going to take on a project, like you're going to paint a room of your house, or you're going to take on a planning an event project or something like this, this is the time of the month that you're going to find the most joy in doing those things. Okay. Because 2 weeks later, right before our period starts and during our period, is the exact opposite scenario. This is the time when you have the least verbal, the least cognitive, the least amount of energy. Okay. This is when a lot of people, at least for me, before I figured this out, I was just frustrated during this time, right? I thought my body and my activity level should just be the same. We're not designed that way. It's no use fighting it. So when you have that stack of books that you want to get to, or you just bought a book or got it from the library, you guys, this is the time to sit down with that book and not feel any guilt. Your body was designed that way. Okay. So that's kind of help number one. Number two about this picture is that it is the ratio of estrogen to progesterone that is going to influence heavily how you experience your cycle. So if you have a lot of pain, if you have a lot of moodiness, if you have a lot of maybe your flow is really heavy, whatever the situation is, if your 14 days are a huge swing in how you experience life, we're going to look at maybe what's causing that in terms of your level of estrogen and your level of progesterone. The further these two get from each other, the more symptomatic you're going to be. Okay. So this could be an estrogen dominance situation where you have too much estrogen, or it could be a progesterone depletion where your progesterone is being stolen, most likely by your adrenals. Okay. So some things to help with menstrual support while you kind of address the root cause. So the Yarrow Palm collection is really, really helpful to supporting hormone balance and supporting your menstrual cycle. So if you don't already, maybe use Yarrow Palm oil in a capsule or under your tongue once a day, or take Yarrow Palm in the capsule. You might want to start doing that while you work to get to the root cause of any menstrual dysfunction you might have. The other thing is turmeric capsules have a twofold support. They also help support hormone balance all throughout the month, but turmeric can also be really, really helpful to reduce pain if you have painful symptoms during menstruation. I know so many of us from a young age were kind of just given handfuls of Advil once a month for a few days. And that can have some pretty catastrophic side effects. So if you can find a way to support your pain, whether it's with turmeric or deep blue polyphenols, those can be really helpful as well. So if you have something that really helps to support your menstrual symptoms, put them in the chat. We'd love to learn from each other. That's what this community does really, really well. Okay, so let's dig into estrogen. Estrogen is, I mentioned it earlier, it has some really, really great benefits to us, both male and female. Just like females have testosterone, men have estrogen, okay? So we think of estrogen in terms of reproductive assets in our body. However, estrogen functions in the brain. It affects our sleep, our mood, our memory, and it also affects our learning and attention span. Estrogen helps to decrease the perception of pain, helps to preserve bone mass, and it also has an effect on cholesterol and blood vessel health. This is why, as we age and our estrogen levels decrease, you start to see women having heart health issues. Okay. So we want to be very aware of our estrogen levels and very aware of how they can get screwed up. So estrogen comes in two forms, endogenous and exogenous. Endogenous is the estrogen that is created in our body by our body. Okay. This is the best form of estrogen. This is the kind that we want to encourage. There's also exogenous or outside of the body forms of estrogen. And this can come in the form of xenohormones or phytoestrogens. Now, xenohormones goes by a lot of names. It goes by xenohormones or endocrine disruptors or xenoestrogens. Basically, this is a synthetic form of estrogen, okay? So let's dig in a little bit more to this topic. First, we're going to talk about how we can support our own body's creation of estrogen and hormones. We talked earlier about how vitamins C, D, calcium, magnesium, zinc can be really helpful to support our adrenal health, okay? Well, you're going to find these specifically in Bone Nutrient. So this is a product that doTERRA has created that is, it's, I think, overlooked, and this should not be. It's very, very useful and inexpensive. So this formula contains D2 and D3 to help bones absorb calcium. I think for us in Michigan or in the North, this is important in the winter. Bone density is created between the ages of 14 and 24. After age 24, you're not going to create more bone mass. We get it all between these ages. So if Bone Nutrient is something that maybe you have written off because you're not in that age where maybe you're post-menopause and at risk of losing bone mass, I want you to realize that if you have children, girls or boys between the ages of 14 and 24, making sure that they get enough of the nutrients that they need in order to create bone mass is really, really important. So Bone Nutrient is a great supplement for kids ages 14 to 24. Now let's talk about how Bone Nutrient can not just help save our bones, but can help with hormone creation. So vitamin D specifically stimulates the production of estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. So that helps with our estrogen hormones. Progesterone also helps with our adrenals and our thyroid. Vitamin C stimulates hormone production and supports progesterone production also, and helps to balance cortisol. So that's important for our adrenals. And then magnesium, is lovely. Magnesium helps to lower blood sugar, regulates cortisol levels. It helps with sleep. And it also is essential for our body to create its own testosterone, progesterone, and estrogen. So I recommend that you take Bone Nutrient at night, specifically because the magnesium can help you get a great night's sleep. Okay. So the recommendation is, I think 4 of these if you are not on Lifelong Vitality, and 2 of these if you are on Lifelong Vitality. But I just want you to think outside of the box when it comes to Bone Nutrient. It is for your bones, but it's for so much more than that. Okay. Okay. So that's endogenous estrogen. So what does it look like to talk about the estrogens that come from outside of our body? So I mentioned earlier estrogen dominance, that this can affect the thyroid, and that estrogen dominance can also affect your cycle. So estrogen dominance is a condition of deficient, normal, or excessive estrogen with little or no progesterone to balance it out. So basically, estrogen dominance is the ratio of estrogen to progesterone, okay? Estrogen dominance has been linked to allergies, autoimmune disorders, breast cancer, uterine cancer, infertility, ovarian cysts, increased blood clots, and also acceleration of the aging process. So whether you are low in progesterone because of your stress and your adrenals and your thyroid, or whether you have high estrogen because of estrogen toxicity, which we'll talk about in a minute, this could absolutely be something at play in your body. So how do you know if you're estrogen dominant? Well, if you look at this list of symptoms, it is similar to those of adrenal fatigue, but it also then adds in the thyroid piece. So, for example, if you always have cold hands and feet, that's a symptom of thyroid dysfunction, probably because your adrenals are stealing all your progesterone and you're in an estrogen dominance situation. Sluggish metabolism, foggy thinking, memory loss, fatigue, trouble sleeping, lots of different things here that can, mood swings. So, estrogen dominance, I want to be very clear about this. Think about this list in terms of the men in your life also, right? Men have a lot of stress. Men can absolutely be exposed to all the toxins that we're going to talk about. So estrogen dominance doesn't only happen in women by any stretch of the imagination. And sometimes estrogen dominance can be visible in a man that has a lot of weight gain in their abdomen. Okay, that can be a sign of estrogen dominance specifically for men. But I would also add in their testosterone levels being low and things like that. So here we go. Some of the disorders and the diseases related to xenohormones or xenoestrogens or estrogen mimicking compounds or endocrine disruptors. We're going to get into that list here in a minute. But I want you to look for yourself in this list. So reproductive site cancers can be caused by this, decreased fertility, estrogen dominance, we just talked about, heart disease, diabetes, prostate cancer, obesity, endometriosis, uterine fibroids. These are all things that can be caused by an exposure to endocrine disruptors. This endocrine disruptor, that word has been kind of out in the world for a while, but I like to look at it from the perspective of all of our hormones in our body. So we will often talk about the Environmental Working Group in this group, or the EWG.org. So this is their dirty dozen of endocrine disruptors. And some of the things on this list you may recognize, like BPA or pesticides in general, fire retardants. So there's a lot of different sources here. I found it interesting. This is the first time I'd heard that the receipt paper can contain BPA. I did not know that. So maybe you want to get your receipt emailed to you whenever possible. But also, I mean, plastics, we talk a lot about plastic, cosmetics, drinking water. So maybe having some sort of filter or reverse osmosis in your house might be helpful. But I think one of the things I want you to be aware of, the list of endocrine disruptors continues to get longer as we learn more. So as we talked about this, 5-10 years ago, don't just think that the things that you learned to avoid then are all you have to avoid. There's always things that are being found that contain endocrine disruptors that we need to be aware of. So to simplify things a little bit, 6 common endocrine disruptors. Now, a lot of us will talk about removing toxins from our environment, removing toxins from our cosmetics and things we use in our body, around our body, in our homes. But this is just a really a more simple list. And one of the things that I found that maybe you could write down if you don't already know is only purchase plastics with the numbers 1, 2, or 5. You want to avoid numbers 3 and 7. And I think that's a phthalate issue. Maybe Sarah can check me on that. But avoiding plastics 3 and 7 will be important. Now, one of the things I want to point out here is the use of herbicides and pesticides. So specifically when we're talking about hormones, and this is a great example of something that I learned After my kids had gotten a little bit older, when I first started learning about this when they were infants. One of the things I've learned is that cotton is a very, very dirty crop, meaning cotton has a lot of herbicides and pesticides. If you think about feminine hygiene products and where we put that cotton, it can be a big source of endocrine disruptors. And we're putting it exactly where it shouldn't go, right? So choosing organic options or choosing a silicone option is worth the research and worth the change, because that can be a big source of endocrine disruptors for women, interestingly enough. If there is something not on this list or something specific that you have learned to take out of your home, out of your routine, because you have found out that it's an endocrine disruptor, I'd love to hear about it. Put it in the chat, whether that's you've swapped out your water bottles or you, whatever it is that you have decided to do differently. We want to learn from you. So please tell us about it. Okay, now we've talked about the sources of exposure up here, but here's something interesting. There is the need to avoid and treat, if you will, our bodies from exposure to these chemicals. And one of the things that we want to be aware of is that our exposure to these chemicals can affect our reproduction and affect how the life of a fetus growing inside of us grows. So we want to be aware, and we'll talk about this, that when we talk about phytoestrogen and detoxing from these chemicals, it's not just this category of people that we need to be aware of. It's all of this as well that we need to be aware of in terms of detoxing from these chemicals. It can affect infants, it can affect pre-puberty, and we'll look at that specifically. Okay, are you guys all still with me? This is a lot of information. I hope that I hope that you're sticking with me here. Okay. Phytoestrogen, my goodness, you guys, this is one of my absolute favorite products. And I think just like bone nutrient, people tend to look at bone nutrient and take it to reduce bone loss, yet there's so many more reasons to take it. Phytoestrogen is something that I think that we think, oh, for women who are going through menopause or women who are struggling with their cycle, like that's specific to them. You guys, it's not by any means, okay? So in phytoestrogen is a brilliant blend of 3 different types of phytoestrogens. So phytoestrogen is the way that we detox our body from xenohormones, estrogen mimicking compounds, endocrine disruptors, right? Whatever you want to call them. This is our detox tool. So the first ingredient is a category of phytoestrogens called isoflavones. And this is specific to the type of isoflavone that is called genistein, okay? So genistein is a soy product. It is, and hear me out, for those of you who have always been told soy is bad, that is not true. This type of soy that is non-GMO and fermented is a very, very beneficial type of soy, okay? They exhibit antioxidant, anti-cancer, antimicrobial, and anti-inflammatory properties. If you have been told soy is bad, that is true if it is GMO and not fermented. Then it has quite opposite properties, okay? Okay, so the second type of phytoestrogen in this product is flaxseed, and also that can be called lignans. So lignans are a second different type of phytoestrogen. They work to prevent breast cancer and prostate cancer specifically. They can also work to prevent bone loss. Now, some of the research about the first ingredient, genistein, can show that it can have some potential negative side effects when a specific type of breast tumor is growing post-menopause, okay? However, the cool thing is when genistein is paired with flaxseed, that negative potential effect is removed, okay? Which is, it's kind of a safety mechanism that's built right in there. Now, this third type of phytoestrogen is pomegranate fruit extract. And this is a very excellent selective receptor that blocks xenohormones from interacting with our body. Okay, so it reduces estrogen dominance and it can help reduce the risk of breast, uterine, thyroid, ovarian, and lung cancer. Pomegranate fruit extract can also reduce fibroids, endometriosis, and thyroid nodules. So this is a really cool protective hormone balancer, and its job is to reduce xenohormones in our body. Xenohormones, so these chemicals that we're exposed to, can exert a 100 to 1,000 times stronger effect than our own estrogen. So it's kind of, these xenohormones are kind of like this bully on the playground that shows up. And the phytoestrogen is like that playground lady, you know, that lady that's hired to keep the peace on the playground. And they just kick out the bullies. They make sure that the peace is maintained there on the playground, okay? So this is, I'm going to actually play this a minute because I want to clean it up for you a little bit. Okay, so this is a picture of my real family. So before that was not my real family. This is my real family. And I want to use these people, this picture, as a way of helping you understand who should take phytoestrogen and why. Okay. Okay. So let's start with my mom. This is my mom, and my mom would be considered post-menopause. And so post-menopause, this is how phytoestrogen can help. Phytoestrogen can reduce hormone symptoms. So hot flashes, vaginal dryness, mood swings. I actually had a woman once who, she was in her mid 80s. And because in your mid 80s, your estrogen level is low, right? Her vaginal dryness was so painful that she was paying $200 for an estrogen cream. Okay. I'll tell you, when I'm in my mid 80s, I don't want to be applying an estrogen cream there. Okay. Okay. So she started taking phytoestrogen, and within a week, that symptom, that painful symptom, had been relieved. Okay. So for a whole lot less money and a whole lot less hassle, she can get the help that she needs. Okay. So phytoestrogen is also going to help reduce bone loss. It's going to help reduce blood sugar or balance blood sugar. It can help with insomnia and cognitive function. Phytoestrogen, you guys, in the research has been found synergistic or helpful with chemo treatment. Okay. Obviously, that's something that you're going to want to do a lot of research on and talk to your doctor about. But it's, as with all things, it's not necessarily one or the other. You can combine plant medicine and Western pharmaceuticals and get some really great results sometimes, especially if that means reducing the amount of chemotherapy that you have to take, right? Okay, so the lignans particularly can help prevent breast cancer, and we know that inflammation is the root cause of all disease. And so if we can use this as an anti-inflammatory, that's a really, really great option and disease preventer in and of itself. Okay, moving on. The next person we're going to talk about is my sister-in-law, Emily. She might actually be here tonight. And I didn't give her a heads up. So here we are. Okay, so let me just get this out of the way here a second. I gotta move you down here. Okay, so Emily is what I would consider a middle-aged woman, right? So not post-menopause, not perimenopause, right? So having a regular cycle. One of the cool things that phytoestrogen can do is it can help protect a fetus and an infant in a breastfeeding situation from the toxicity of those exposure to the hormones. It can help reduce those toxins in that situation. So it's a great thing to take prior to pregnancy, throughout, and then during the breastfeeding time. Phytoestrogen can reduce PMS symptoms. It can help treat fibroids, endometriosis, ovarian cysts, and fertility issues. Phytoestrogen, because it helps to reduce the toxins of the xenohormones, prevents estrogen-feeding cancers. And on that list would be breast, ovarian, uterine, thyroid, and lung cancer. It can help prevent a breast cancer reoccurrence, and it can act synergistically with tamoxifen to inhibit tumor growth. So for those people who have had a breast cancer scare or breast cancer experience and are on tamoxifen for a long time, that has its own side effects. Phytoestrogen can help inhibit tumor growth when used in conjunction with tamoxifen. And this isn't stuff that I'm making up. This is all in the research. Okay, so next one is my son, Peter. Peter is 13. So he is I guess he would call him a teen boy now, right? But how many of you have ever thought, phytoestrogen, I should give that to my 13-year-old son? Well, you should, and here's why, okay? You guys, this is like the most amazing thing. So phytoestrogen can help actually undo the damage of estrogen mimicking compounds like BPA and phthalates. So after exposure and damage has been done to the reproductive organs, listen, I want grandchildren, okay? Phytoestrogen, because of the genistein in it, per the research, can actually help undo the damage, okay? Now, here's the cool thing. And this is research out of Asia, where genistein and soy, right, in the form of genistein, is very high in the diets of Asian people. They have found that their incidence of breast cancer and prostate cancer is low. And it is because the genistein helps to program these tissues when taken prepubescently to be resistant to cancer. If your prepubescent kids are not on phytoestrogen, start now. It will program their tissues to be resistant to cancer. Isn't that cool? Huh. Okay, this is my brother. He certainly doesn't know I'm talking about him. Okay, so what if you have a man in your life? Should they be on phytoestrogen? Yes, absolutely. Okay, here's why. So in men, it will help prevent prostate cancer. It will help prevent aging of the skin, cardiovascular disease, help prevent estrogen-feeding cancers, which of course men also have, like they can get breast cancer, prostate cancer, testicular cancer, and it can help balance their testosterone levels, okay? So the very first time I gave this class, and it was not all of this information, but it was a good amount about cancer, my husband came up to me and he said, "Are you feeding me that stuff?" And I said, "No." And he goes, "Well, should you?" And I said, "Yes." So my husband actually also takes phytoestrogen, okay? So personally, I would say around that time when kids start having the first signs of like puberty is coming in the next few years, like that kind of 9, 10, 11 age, you can start. And it doesn't have to be a full dose. It can, I mean, it's body dependent, right? Their size, appropriate for their size. So 2 or 3 a week is probably sufficient. That has certainly helped to reduce kind of the moodiness symptoms in my house. But my husband will do probably like 2 weeks on of phytoestrogen and 2 weeks off. Okay. And that's just, I just picked that. There's no probably science behind that. So, all right. Let's move on to Clary Calm. If you love Clary Calm, put it in the chat. This is one of, this is a really, really great oil, especially for like seasons of a lot of hormonal change. There was a time when I got a phone call, my daughter was in middle school, and I got a phone call that like, "So your daughter is peddling oils in the hallway in middle school and we need her to stop." Because this was life-saving for her and all of us. So there's some really great research surrounding the ingredients in Clary Calm. So the ingredients you can see listed here along the left, but I pulled out these two research articles specifically because one talks about menopausal women and one talks about college students. So what they found when they had menopausal women inhale clary sage is it reduced their levels of cortisol significantly. Okay, so the hormones that run around in our body in response to stress, inhaling clary sage reduced it significantly. And maybe that's why I've been loving clary sage lately. But when they had college students also inhale lavender, clary sage and rose, they rubbed on their abdomens, it reduced their cramps significantly. Okay, so we can use clary sage both for the aromatherapy properties and for the topical muscle relieving and relaxing properties. And it benefits the whole gamut. Okay, so wherever you want to apply this is great. Use your intuition. I encourage you to do that. When I first got this, I was excited to use it, and I tend to put it around my ankles. And the reason for that is your reflex point to your uterus is at your ankles. And so applying oils there can relax the uterus. If you love the smell of this, you can put it on the back of your neck, you can put it on your abdomen, wherever you want to put it. So in the chat, tell us who in your family uses it, where you put it. But this one is in my purse at all times. Okay, so these three products, Phytoestrogen, Bone Nutrient, and Clary Calm, come in a package deal. You can buy them separately, but you can get a little bit of a discount if you purchase them. You can search Women's Health Kit on your loyalty rewards order and buy these three items together. Okay, now we started in the beginning with progesterone. We're gonna come full circle here and come back to progesterone. So remember, we want our progesterone levels a little bit higher. We want our estrogen toxicity lower. That will bring us more into balance and support not only healthy tissues and cancer prevention, but it can reduce hormonal fluctuation symptoms. It can give us a healthy thyroid. It can give us a healthy adrenal glands. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to combine thyme and clary sage. Thyme improves progesterone production. And so we want to combine thyme and clary sage, and you want to apply it to the back of your neck daily. Now, if you're a woman, you can add ylang ylang to that for some more support. And if you're a man, you can add sandalwood for testosterone support. Now, sandalwood specifically balances testosterone levels in both men and women. So if you are a man and you are struggling with low testosterone levels, you can take 2 drops of sandalwood, apply it directly to the testicles every other day. Okay, that is a way that you can increase your testosterone. You didn't think I was going to go there tonight, did you? Well, that's what you get when you get a nurse teaching your class. No words are off limits. Okay, so I'm going to end with this sweet little picture. This is my niece, Claire. So one of the wonders of phytoestrogen and balancing your hormones, detoxing from all of those toxins is a healthy fertility system. So when my brother married his wife, Emily, her reproductive system had undergone so much dysfunction by that time that she knew that having children biologically was probably not in the cards for them. So they got married and went right on the path of adoption and adopted a sweet little boy. But in the process of doing that, she decided that she was just going to try to do what she needed to do to be healthier. That the intention was not to have that big of an impact because she didn't think it was possible. So she started Lifelong Vitality. She did the cleanse. Gut health is central to all of our functional, our organ function. but she also started on phytoestrogen. And the results of that was she missed her whole first trimester with this child because she didn't know she was pregnant. And so this is what can happen when we remove our toxins from our body and we work to naturally balance our hormones. We can have miracles happen, okay? So let's come back to this. Put in the chat, what did you learn that you want to continue? What do you want to start? And what do you want to stop? Okay. I'm going to stop share. And Steph, is there anything in the chat that we need to address before we're done tonight?
Wow, there was a lot of really awesome, a lot of awesome information. I'm not sure how Tupperware is going to feel about us pointing out the yellow, brown, and orange stuff is toxic, Kim. But that's so funny because I feel like I totally have some of that in my house. So I think a lot of people had mentioned about even just like that time of the month and female products. I also mentioned I could not believe how much less cramping I had when I stopped putting cotton products anywhere near myself during my period. So that's something I recommend for everyone. And then I think, Anne, thank you for just sharing the importance of, we have these amazing oils and we think that like they're so amazing, and they are, and then you start realizing the importance of the supplements and the vitamins and everything. And I just keep thinking like these are so life-changing. And I also have had a pregnancy because of these taking these products, and it just brings tears to your eyes, because when we know better, we do better, right?
Yeah. Yep. Sarah, do you have a question? Hi.
Hi, I muted myself. There was a question in the chat about those who have had a hysterectomy. Bridget, where did you go? Did you have a specific question about that?
I was just wondering, like, obviously, if you're still having a period, obviously, you know when that's coming and when that cycle's coming. So if you've had a hysterectomy or if you're in menopause, like, how are you supposed to like kind of know when those high times are?
So with the hysterectomy, it matters whether it's with or without the ovaries, because the ovaries can still trigger the cycle. And of course you don't necessarily know because there's not that obvious sign, but just know that the ovaries are still in play there. And I would say, I mean, phytoestrogen, whether it's 1 a day or 2 a day, is going to be important regardless, because your estrogen levels are still created elsewhere in your body. I mean, our brain actually creates estrogen also. It's created in a lot of different places. So it can help reduce symptoms in terms of just elevating our estrogen level if that's what it needs. But everybody, regardless of age and gender, needs to detox our bodies of these chemicals. And so phytoestrogen, for that reason, should be taken alone. And quite honestly, at that point, the hormonal balance that you'll get can just be a really great side effect. It's the toxin reduction, the detox, that's going to be the most beneficial at that point. So don't give yourself an excuse to not take it, for sure.
No, I'm taking it. It was just the question of, you said like day 14 was when that high, not the high,
and you want to figure out when it is.
Yeah, I want to know when it's productive time for me.
Well, quite honestly, that's where keeping a journal comes in. I mean, that's where, like, really, what's my level of bloatedness? If that's a common symptom for you, what's my level of, how do I interact with the people in my household?
Right.
and maybe they can help you keep a journal of that if that's your main symptom as well. There is somebody in our group, you guys, her name is Marsha Strickland, who is also a nurse, and she is post breast cancer, and her oncologist wants her to take phytoestrogen. So I just want to address that there are people who have had breast cancer and they kind of have that like no way, I'm avoiding all soy. And they just kind of write this whole thing off. And I want to be very clear, there's a bad soy and a good soy, and the good soy can prevent a breast cancer reoccurrence. So I would encourage you to talk to your physician if you fall into that category. And if you want to reach out to somebody local who has that experience, is a nurse, and has, you know, been given the green light to do the things she wants to do, we can always put you in touch with her as well. Okay. Any other questions? No, good. You guys, that was an hour on the dot. Good job. Okay, here's the last thing I'll say. We are taking a break from these Monday night classes in July. We are going to do something called Oil Camp, which is all online. It's going to give you flexibility while you're out enjoying the nice weather. So in the email that you're getting tomorrow with the replay of this, and feel free to pass this along to anybody that you think would love to hear this information. You're going to get a link to register for our next educational event, which is Oil Camp. So sign up. We'll start all this up again in August because we'll miss you and we want to see your faces. And so that's that. All right. I will see you all soon. Look for your email tomorrow. Bye, everyone.